Hello, and welcome to Knights of the Night Actual Play Podcast. This 5th edition D&D adventure, The Heretic, was written and run by your DM, Scott. And now, please enjoy episode 496, titled, With Death at Home and on the Horizon. Actual play begins immediately.
Hello everyone, this is Scott, your DM for this 5e adventure, The Heretic. With me tonight, starting on my right, is...
I am Tom. I'm playing Alder Rusha, a human male cleric of Amira, and a skill-seeking rogue.
Hi, I'm Mike, and I'm playing Marduk, a male half-orc fighter, graduate of the Academy, and an Eldritch Knight of the Fist of Amira.
I am Jim playing Grodor, a hobgoblin warlock and one of the Mourning Fists of Amira, searching for truth, knowledge, and bone dice.
I'm John. I'm playing Melody, female human cleric, third of the Exemplar family Harmony, ex-ambassador turned political operative by way of the Fists of Amira.
I'm Thomas, and I'll be playing Gabrielle DeAngelis. She's a female Azamar paladin and a holy Fist of Amira, whose belief in the importance of our collective destiny drives her ever onward towards her fated oath of conduct.
Before we get started, I want to make sure that everyone gets the proper inspiration from last week's session that I did not hand out at the end of the session because I needed to disappear very quickly. Everyone, for their role-playing of the dream sequences and the role-playing of how we talked about Grodor's patron and delved a bit into backgrounds in our belief system and how we feel about Amira right now. There was a lot of conversation that was really great character building last week, and I want to award everyone 1 point of inspiration for that. During the night, while you were camping in the Redlands, there were 2 dreams that occurred, seemingly simultaneously, from both Marduk and Grodor. In one, Grodor explained that he was told by his patron to seek out a pair of bone dice that were owned by an individual named Aragast. In a similar, or at least a complementary dream, Marduk didn't reveal all that happened in his dream, but he did mention that an individual that he was close to, sitting around a campfire, had a pair of bone dice that they were rolling, and they seemed to have some magical properties. Whatever she thought of a number, that number would roll. And she playfully won some coin from him and teased him a bit before she showed him the truth behind the dice themselves. And our brave heroes traversed the Redlands, had gone through a day of light travel, had met a military caravan heading to the west. You got some news from the caravan. One, the war had begun. The lawgivers had attacked in the northeast at Harrow's Gate and had attacked in the northwest at Morn Keep. And that's all the information you had. There wasn't any real details besides the fact that it looked like the keeps were holding at this point. There also was a bit of information in regards to the pillar of Travail, the town you were heading towards, and the fact that he had died of some type of disease the day prior and was being laid out in state. You decided to continue heading on, where you met with an old friend of the Harmony family. His name was Urzoth, an orc, strangely enough. Orcs are very uncommon in the land of Amira since they have their own autonomous region that you're actually traveling to. But this is a full-blooded orc who owns the Watering Hole, a caravanserai and inn on the outskirts of Travail. There was a quick catch-up session where then you went to pay your respects to the deceased pillar, Argast Norik. So you find yourself at the Hall of Heroes in the middle of the city of Travail. It's mid-afternoon. The sun is blazing down. Most of the town is shut down for these torturously hot afternoon hours. The Hall of Heroes itself is reminiscent of the architecture of Temerity, unlike the rest of the town. It is a marble structure with cerulean blue tile on its roof. It's at least 2 stories high, and the stories are at least 20 feet apiece. So it's got some stature to it. Then it has a dome on top of the 2 stories. So it is the most prominent building in Travail. It's also open to the air. The entrances lead directly in. There's no doors. It's just open hallways and walkways, which eventually work you to the middle of the structure, which is a large altar made of marble as well, upon which lies the deceased form of Aragast, the former pillar of Travail. And next to him, in a black outfit of mourning, not so much a gown, but more a blouse and a skirt, is a stout dwarf woman with graying hair, streaked with black, and she seems to be mourning the passing of her husband. As you make your way up, there's not a ton of people waiting in line to view Aragast, as it being the middle of the hottest part of the day. Most people are inside taking a break. So you find yourself with a short line to work your way forward. There are some guards, not guards specifically, but soul watch. So the town watchmen are there making sure that everyone's paying their respects and not getting too rowdy or doing anything that's untoward, except for respecting the passing of their former pillar.
I don't know how to diplomatically approach it. And though Gabrielle is known for barging in and just settling things up, I think it would be extremely gauche at a funeral to demand some random accoutrement from his list of possessions. So I'm not sure how to approach it. I can try to
work our way there. I have a passing familiarity with this family. Being exemplars from the next town over, my family has dealt with these folk. I can start the conversation and maybe work our way in that direction.
Marduk asks Gabrielle if she senses any danger or evil here. Does she feel anything?
I'm going to roll some kind of awareness before I spend a pulse of detect evil, because we're at no, I'm not. He's an attentive man. He was asking for my supernatural expertise. I guess I'll spend a point.
I'm not telling you what to do, but I ask you.
Right. I was just rationalizing it to myself. I didn't mean to.
Marduk trying not to be too much of a zealot, but he's starting to be suspicious of Amira's action and everything, and I don't like coincidences. So I'm a little bit suspicious of this person dying just before we get into town, which to me seems like we might be guided here. So
Gabrielle spends a moment, her eyes shine a luminous blue. I'm going to ask the GM, I guess, do I detect any celestial fiends or undead within 60 feet of me? I don't think I do.
It also says objects that have been consecrated or desecrated.
I missed that part.
Well, we're on hallowed ground, so you should get a sense of everything. And if we don't actually detect that, that might be a big problem.
Right. So I guess the consequential thing I'm detecting here is not so much is there a divine or terrible creature, so much as has this corpse been, by the proper definitions, defiled? Has evil magic been done to it?
That's a 60-foot radius, so I'm going to say that you guys start making your way in a line up towards the pillar that's lying in state. You get closer to him, and the guard moves over to let you guys kind of walk your way in. You do not detect anything fiendish at all, either with his body in repose or within the Hall of Heroes, that you can tell within the radius that your eyesight and your feeling that overwhelms you. You don't feel anything within that realm at all. You do feel that the altar itself is
heavily
consecrated. The altar is made of marble. Then there's also some colored marble of browns and greens and other hues that surround the altar in a circle that's about 20 foot in radius. 20 feet in diameter. That circle also seems to be consecrated and hallow with celestial power.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the pillar himself and his wife and the guardsmen and whoever else is close by, they're not registering anything on your radar as being fiendish, celestial, or undead.
Alder is staying close to Melody, as I know she's very comfortable talking with these individuals, kind of politically, but I'm also pretty decent at convincing and occasionally being a little deceitful if necessary. Mm-hmm. So I do want to accompany her in case there's some discussion we need to have.
Yes. Vana, the wife of Aragast, she is currently reaching out with one hand and holding on to Aragast's shoulder because she's very close to the altar and seems to be fighting back tears and just struggling. She does have a veil that's kind of upturned and is laying over her hair. Gabrielle, when you did your divine sense, you noticed that there were glyphs in the circle, or like at the very border of the circle of marble that's around the altar. There are glyphs. You're now inside the Hall of Heroes. So even though it's open air, there's still a ceiling, a dome above you, and there's cover. So you see them faintly glowing, these sigils and these glyphs that make a wide circle around the altar itself.
Then I will complete my report. There's nothing supernaturally out of the ordinary yet. Lots of consecrated objects, but there's some kind of, I'm going to assume it's a magical circle around the body.
Vana moves to the north and just says something to one of the guards. She says it in a pretty low voice. You don't really hear what she says, but she just stepped away for a moment to speak to one of the guards that is stationed at the 4 cardinal points. If everyone could make a quick perception check.
I rolled a 15.
Or Duke rolled a 12.
Grodor has other things on his mind and rolled a 3.
Okay.
Grodor, maybe you're studying these runes for me. Can you tell me what they say?
Melody got a 17.
And Alder rolled a 7 as I am spending time kind of looking at this temple. Is it a temple of Amira, obviously, or no?
Actually, just for character description, Gabrielle has been, when not totally on mission to answer Marduk's question, absolutely engrossed in the grandeur of the temple. She's really into strictly architecture.
Yes, it is a really interesting combination of a Hall of the Heroes of Prevail's past of the city and also a temple to Amira. They seem to have a merged purpose for this, and it's just filled with marble columns stretching up towards the ceiling, and those columns themselves are carved with imagery of battles and wars and of Amira's blessings, and just tons of history is embedded in this Hall of Heroes. There are 4 large alcoves that surround the center of the Hall of Heroes, and these 4 alcoves have statues of heroes of Travail's past, 4 of them specifically. So there's a lot to look at. There's a lot to take in, and it doesn't surprise me that the perception checks weren't fantastic overall, because you're looking up at the vaulted ceiling. I mean, this is the first building in this little town that feels anything close to home, and this has the direct feel of temerity.
I think it's correct that Alder finds this interesting in the sense that I am a very strong believer in Amira, but yet I'm seeing warriors. But this is the east side of our country. This is where there were a great deal of battles. So I don't find it unusual, but it is unique to what I'm used to seeing.
Granted, that makes perfect sense. It is unique. You do not see warriors in temples in Western Amira. It's just, it doesn't happen. It's not what happens. Maybe sages or maybe high exarchs that have ruled in the past, there might be statues of them throughout temerity, but warriors themselves is a distinctly Eastern Amira conceit. Gabrielle and Melody both noticed that when Vana stepped outside of the circle, it might be a coincidence, but the runes that were lightly glowing increase in intensity around the marble circle, the 20-foot diameter marble circle that's consecrated. So for some reason, she stepped out of the circle, and the circle runes got maybe twice as bright, which still isn't staggeringly bright in this
Just enough to be
huge
noticed.
hall, but there's enough for you to notice, and people were looking at other things and just gawking at the grandeur of the hall, and those are the ones who missed the glow.
So far, does it look like she was the only one in the circle, or is there a parade of people that have been strolling through and past it?
It is cleared out. There are no visitors currently in the temple. You were the last people to kind of make your way up, and none of you are in the circle either. So when she steps out, the runes glow, and you said something to one of the guards, and he responded back with a low murmur, and then she makes her way back into the circle, and the runes glow a little less. They lose their intensity. She again puts her hand on his shoulder and puts her forehead onto the shoulder as well of her deceased husband, and just seems to sob a bit, and she's upset, obviously.
I didn't notice the room's changing color or brightness, but I do walk up to the edge of the circle and stop, and I'm looking at Melody and side glancing occasionally at Gabrielle, because I don't know about I do know about the tradition of not approaching a coffin until you have an invite from the member of the family, in this case, the wife. I don't want to just walk up without acknowledgement from her.
So you kind of don't enter the circle and wait with your hands in front of you, kind of patiently showing your respect.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, right.
She composes herself after a few moments and looks up and sees you, Alder. With a slight nod of her head, you get an acquiesce. You're sure that's to approach.
And I'm sure Melody is right next to me, because I was trying to stay next to Melody as opposed to initiating it myself, because Melody is way more comfortable with dealing with this family than I don't know anything about them.
Yeah. I switched out when we were at the watering hole for a button-up that has like a house sigil on the pocket.
Okay.
So I'm recognizably of the Harmony family.
Right. She makes eye contact with you as well, and she nods again as if to say, you guys are welcome to step forward if you wish to pay your respects.
Gabrielle steps through and begins to pray to Amira, properly paying respects in the way of our people that I personally don't know, but she knows like the back of her hand.
Okay, so you kneel down and pray. Typical liturgy that has to do with death and dying. And
a prayer for the Amira to recognize the deeds of the lost.
It looks like one of the guards moved closer, Scott, in the west.
Yeah, he did. Like he kind of shadowed you guys as you moved closer. Just, I guess, being an attentive watchman, and just kind of moved closer to make sure you guys have weapons. You're wearing armor in some cases.
We're Fists of Amira in our full honor guard.
Well, I don't know that you did. I don't know that you put that on, because you guys have been concealing that fact for
that's true. That's
a
true.
while. So I assume that you did not have your soul shards out, your emblems of the Fist of Amira.
I am wearing my rapier on the side in the scabbard, but it is tied off. It's something that my mother used to do in the Court of Temerity. She had it tied off, and it's quite evident that it's going to take time and effort to untie it. Okay. So it should not freak him out, but that's me. I don't know about what everyone else is doing. So I walk to the side of Melody, but I am closer to the coffin than Melody is to the wife here, because, again, Melody knows this person, and I'm assuming is going to start the conversation.
Okay. The guards, not having a lot to do, step a little closer, just, again, keeping their eye on you guys and making sure everything is copacetic.
I say greetings on behalf of my house on this dark day with death at home and on the horizon.
She nods and says, greetings. I believe I recognize your house from...
Family of Harmony hails from Tarask, and we maintain the relationships between the Orcish Autonomous Zone and the rest of Amiran culture.
I'm sure that's a challenging provision to have to undertake. Yes. Thank you for coming to pay your respects. He was a good man. He ruled for nearly 40 years. He will be missed by his people and by our entire country. Her voice gets a little shaky towards the end, and she fights back some tears, and then she reaches out again with her left hand and grasps his left forearm and just to hold on to him and touch him again. It doesn't take a insight check to notice that she's struggling, and this is a tough moment for her. Unless she's the best actress in the world, she's struggling.
Indeed.
She looks around and says, "Who are your companions?"
These folks are assisting me in my travels home. They have business there as well, but everyone needs guards while traveling these days, especially with the news.
She was looking at you like she was holding the conversation and making eye contact with you and reaching out and touching your husband. And when you say my companions, she looks over to Alder and nods. She can't quite see Marduk kind of a little ways back past Alder, but she does not get a chance to also make eye contact with Gabrielle because the altar is fairly significant in size. And then there's the deceased body on the altar, and she's a dwarf woman. She's maybe 4.5 foot tall, somewhere in that ballpark. She's not seeing over the altar, but she then looks and feels the presence of Rodor behind her and looks towards him and looks at him for a second just to make eye contact. And then she double takes and she looks back at him, and her complexion, which is pretty ruddy for a dwarf, but was a little bit sallow because of probably all the pain and sadness that she's enduring right now. She almost goes white when she sees Grodor.
Uh-oh.
And she takes a step back and says, what are you doing here?
Have you been struck by dreams as well?
That one is no good, she says out like really loud.
And guards.
One of the guards hears her and starts moving forward towards you, Marduk. And he's like, "Excuse me, sir, I need to get through."
I let him pass, but I look around. Are all the other guards converging on the dais here, or the circle here?
This particular watchman who's making his way up seems to have some emblems on his uniform which mark him as the watch captain. So he seems to be in charge. The others are looking on concerned, but they're not approaching. He's approaching her. And he's like, "Ma'am, are you all right, ma'am?
And I'm
are you
like,
all right?"
I got my hands up, like, what did I do? And I'm saying, "Sorry, have we met? What is your concern?"
I step in between them, and holding my hands up, I go down to one knee and speak to her and say, "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I know this is a trying time and that there may have been strange or unusual dreams that you had, but I think perhaps..."
We've only just come to the city. How could she know who we are?
I think perhaps we can talk about this in private. And when I kneel, I bend down, and I do it in such a way that I intentionally allow the necklace to come out that has both the soul shard. It also has the Fist of Amira amulet on the chain, so that both of them kind of swing out into the open a little bit while I'm facing towards her. And I'm basically trying to convince her to relax and trust us and know that we are not being detrimental to her in any way.
Yeah.
Duplicitous. Good word.
Good word, too. So in her face, you can see anger and disbelief and fear when she looks at Grodor. You can go ahead and try to make a persuasion check as the watch captain makes his way through. Melody, he's asking you if you could possibly allow him through.
I'm going to take a step back from where I was, still with my hands up. I mean no harm. Do not know what your concern is. I am just here to pay my respects.
I think this is a vital situation for us to resolve quickly. So when I am going to make this persuasion roll, I'm going to do it with advantage. I'm going to use my inspiration. And I rolled a 20.
Well, that's good because the DC, she was so stricken and so emotional about seeing Grodor that the DC was 20 for this particular check. So you met the DC for that, and you're able to
calm her a bit.
Temporarily, yeah. She's still shaken, and she's still uncomfortable, and she's still looking for her watch captain, but seems like she heard you. And she looked at the soul shard, and she looks at the amulet of the Fists of Amira, and recognition dawns in her eyes, like you're someone that can be listened to at least for a moment. You're not here to hurt her in any way, seemingly. Mm-hmm. So that's where she's at. But the guard comes over and says, "Ma'am, how can I help you? What's wrong? Have these people bothered you in some way?" He's an older watch captain, probably in his 50s or so, human. He's got a scar underneath his left eye that looks like it maybe is from a dagger. He's got like a 5 o'clock shadow where he's kind of got stubble going on, and just looks the part of a watch captain with these steel gray eyes. And she looks to him and says, I had a vision when my husband died that man, and she points towards Grodor, was going to steal his belongings, his artifact. I'm sure it was that man in my vision. It was absolutely him. And she starts to get a little bit worked up again as she's remembering, and the vision is washing over her. She absolutely saw a vision of Grodor stealing the bone dice, she says.
I am still down on one knee, both hands empty and outward, as if trying to shield her from anybody behind me. And I am looking at both her, and then I speak to the guard as well and say, this is way more complicated because we have been on the road, and we also had visions last night that involved this same situation. So I do believe we should find somewhere that we can talk in private. And I understand if she wants to limit which of us talk with her and how many guards she wants to take. I'm fine with all of that. But I think it's vital, for reasons that we can explain much better in private, that we talk about this.
Go ahead, make a persuasion check.
Yes. Before I do that, I am pulling in my right hand. I am grabbing the soul shard, and I am saying a prayer to Amira loud enough that I can actually hear that I'm doing it. But what I'm also doing is casting guidance to give myself a +4, or not a +4, but a die 4. And what I'm praying for is the guidance of Amira. So my roll was a 6, and the guidance is a 3, so it's only a total of 9.
He listens to you with your 9. He's not being super aggressive. He's not drawing his weapon. He's listening to what she said about visions. He's listening to what you're saying now about visions. He's hearing about something stolen. So he's back. He hears what you say, but he goes back to her and says, "Ma'am, I can escort them out if you would prefer. There seems to be more going on here. I'm not quite sure, but whatever your highness believe should be done, it will be the will of my watchman."
My lady, you said your husband helped this town, and that he helped the people. And what I'm asking is for him to do it one more time, because what we're doing is going to help the nation.
Could you go ahead and please make a persuasion check, this time with advantage because you had a 20 on your last roll, and she's listening to you and doesn't feel threatened by you specifically.
I rolled a 3 and a 4.
Wow.
Perhaps you foresaw the person who would receive this artifact, that it would be bequeathed to Grodor to carry on the mission.
My lady, I'm an expert in interpretational dreams, and I think you were receiving yours a bit too literally. I have like a +4 to persuasion. Does anyone else want to take a crack at it? I feel like I should go.
Did we resolve this 8 yet?
I was about to, but I want to give everyone a chance to kind of shout in and give their 2 cents as they realize that she wasn't as on board with the whole we're in the same boat kind of thing. She still thinks you're there to take something of her husband's, which is a tough thing to overcome. Her husband's just died, and it's part of his being, and it would be natural. I'm saying what I'm trying to say, I guess, Alder, is your role didn't be too surprising because it really is a situation where you're asking for a lot. Your first role is kind of trust us, believe us, we're not here to hurt you. Okay, you're a fist of Amira. You're some sort of cleric because you have a soul shard. Okay,
right.
I can listen to you, but I'm not necessarily going to believe everything you say or want to just jump right into a negotiation with you, if that makes sense.
Mine was about us helping her, and now it's about her helping us.
Right.
So
yeah.
It's completely understandable that she's not.
There was a change in tone, for sure.
Yeah.
She looks at you and says, the dream was specific. It was very clear. That man crept into this hall in the middle of the night and stole my husband's dice that he used in all sorts of divination to protect this town and to guide it and to help it grow and to help its citizens be sustained and be healthy and be prosperous. And I saw what I saw. I know what I saw. He stole the dice, and the guardsman's like, okay, man. Okay, Your Highness.
At this point, Melody does a whip round her head, a gather up maneuver motion.
Like your team?
I say to her that if he was a thief in the night, he would not have approached during the day. I am going to take my people from you so that you have time to think about it, but I would like to talk this evening, and if he is talking to you, he can't be here stealing. So this can wait. I don't want to push you into something you aren't ready for, and hopefully with a little bit of time, we can earn your trust.
Go ahead and make a persuasion check, please.
I'm going to use one of those inspirations. Wow.
Okay.
I can do it after the fact, but...
While we're talking about dice, are the dice in the coffin with him, or are they...
Good question. He has his hands folded onto his chest. His left hand is on top of his right hand, and it's open. His right hand is clenched into a fist.
Like he's shooting craps?
Like it's a state of repose on the altar.
Melody, you got a 21 on this roll? I don't know how the team reacts to this.
Yeah, let's get that, because as you're talking, what is everyone doing? As Melody is trying to say what she's trying to say, is anyone staying where they're standing? Or is everyone kind of moving away from her and trying to back off a bit? What's the general vibe for each of you?
I know I am moving back the way we came to the west, leaving the area, but I'm doing it as I'm escorting Grodor out, keeping him as far away as possible from her.
So, Grodor, you allow Alder to take your arm and kind of walk with you to the eastern alcove or entranceway?
I was going to be making my way out anyways, but I'm definitely, I got my hands up like, I got nothing to hide and I'm not doing anything wrong. I say, I'm sorry you had a vision that had me doing something I would not do. It's strange. It's weird that there's other of us have had visions like this. Hopefully we can figure this out and sort this out. I am definitely not here to steal anything from anybody.
Go ahead and make a persuasion check as you're walking away.
Is this an advantage thing or not an advantage
Not
thing?
for you, unfortunately. Because you are it's almost, I want to almost give disadvantage.
Yeah.
But I'm going to just let you, the situation's different. It's not the middle of the night. You got your hands up. People are making good.
Oh, and I did horrible.
Do you have the option to use
I'm going to use,
inspiration?
I am going to use inspiration because that was a horrible roll of a 5.
What did you roll? A 5? Okay. There you go.
Oh, that's much better.
Oh,
Yes.
that'll do it.
That's awesome.
A 7 instead of a 5.
Well,
I tried.
I consider rolls that are 5 and under to be pretty abysmal. So the 7 does help a little bit. She looks at you like she doesn't. Yeah, she looks at you like she doesn't trust you. She's on guard when you're talking. when Melody talks and pulls everyone back, she takes a deep breath and says, I only know what I saw in my sleep last night. It was a hobgoblin that looked exactly like your compatriot, who snuck in here in the middle of the night, invisible, and stole the dice, the bone dice. I don't know any of you and what you would expect of me, but I'm just grieving the death of my husband.
That is fair. I think if we meet tonight, he cannot possibly be stealing from you in the same night. So it would be for your sake of mind that we meet under your guard, waves to Captain, and talk about these visions and what they could mean, because we have some of our own to share. Our fates seem intertwined in some way, and I'd like to sort that out peaceably rather than with accusations and bloodshed.
Go ahead and make another persuasion check, please.
Yeah, this is on the way out. I'm back.
Right, as you're backing away. Right.
Yeah.
That can't write on the 21. He has to roll again.
The 21 was really good. How about if I give him advantage for the second roll? Because he is asking for a distinct meeting. The first time was we've had visions, and it was a little bit different of a tone, I thought.
The guidance spell is a cantrip, so I can do it again.
Oh, sure.
And
but
I
it's
do.
also a bonus action, so it's not even like a big thing.
Right.
Right. Yeah, you just whisper under your breath and give Melody guidance on her.
My first roll is a 13.
Okay.
The second roll is a 23. Did I have guidance?
You do. That would be Alder. Alder, what kind of guidance did she get?
It's a die 4.
26 total.
She looks back at you and says, if there is one thing my husband had that I do not have, it was the ability to act rashly, sometimes even against his own interest, if he felt it was for the interest of Prevail. I am going to honor him and allow us to meet briefly this evening. I want it done here, and I want it done with my watch present. There's an upstairs room that can be used for conferences and meetings. So we will meet here at the Hall of Heroes, and we will discuss it. I will hear about your dreams and visions, and you will hear more about mine. And we will see where it takes us.
There's a fleeing bow. We will be at the watering hole if you wish to send word.
Be back here at 9 bells.
And I nod and turn around, and I think I'm hailing the group as we exit.
Yeah. Okay, again, you walk out into the blistering heat of the midday sun. And
I just wanted a break, man.
Yeah, it's probably about 15 to 20 degrees cooler inside the Hall of Heroes, even though it's open air. But it hits you in the face again. It's a dry heat, so there's that. But it's heat. And as you make your way, I'm assuming, back to the watering hole?
Yeah, let's go get that wine I bought. That went much worse than I expected.
Well, I don't know about that. We have a meeting, and we know that the dice exist.
Yeah, we found a way to break the ice and talk about the dice rather than not knowing where they're at and having to approach it
Don't
awkwardly.
talk about ice. Just taunting me.
And we seem to know that the dice are in the church with the body.
The dice are where, Marduk?
Well, if her vision was accurate, then Gordor is going to sneak back into the chapel, and the dice are presumably with the body.
Man, I was too busy praying. Those are some good ears on you.
I don't want to make good on whatever fell forces sent her a vision. I'd rather attain these honorably.
I agree. I would like to spin it where...
I'm kind of sus as to where all three of our visions came from, and my guess is she got her vision at the same time I got my vision, at the same time you got your vision, and it just seems a little weird that we all three got visions from who knows where all at the same time. I'm wondering if they're all fake and they're all just to cause chaos and to slow us down on our travel.
And I'm wondering if Mira isn't missing or dead and that she's sending a lending hand to us now.
Don't know.
And I'm using my Eldritch training here because, we try to think through these things somewhat logically, even though I don't have very good willpower for such things. But anyway, perhaps this is visions of a mirror of what we need. That's why we saw the dice. And this pillar, if he had not been killed or stopped, he would have bequeathed those dice to us as part of Amira's plan. So in her vision, maybe Grodor was taking them, but maybe part of the vision could be interpreted that those dice must pass on to Grodor.
Melody, can I have a glass of that wine?
Yeah, you continue to walk through the streets. I think it was about a 15 or 20 minute walk back out through the gates, the small gates of Travail, and back to the watering hole. You get back, you get a table. Your contact, Urzoth, isn't there right now, Melody, but it's easy enough to get either some of the wine that
I purchased it before we left.
There was some you purchased before you left. There was some that you got from a broken down caravan where you met the Goliath.
True enough. We probably still have some of that.
There's some of that. There's obviously stuff on tap here as well. So any way you want to go about it, you can either pour your own or
They have a deal with a mage to keep a cool box that I have the wine in. So after the heat of the day, we're gonna sip on that.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Some iced wine at the end of a hot day. I'm assuming it's going to be white, though, if it's going to be cold.
Probably.
So, yeah, you all sit around the table, and Brother Byron says, he's trained for a year to become Fists of Amira. We're sent on a mission to the Hollow Lands. We are, in essence, Amira's pieces on the chessboard. I just felt the other side moving against us. Sort of like the first time, really, since we hit the road. I just felt like a move had been made to try to thwart us. I feel like the game has started. And I don't know if it has anything to do with war being declared yesterday or what the situation is, but it just feels like the chess moves are now being made in earnest.
Yeah, that was my first thought, that this was a false image to thwart us from trying to do what we were sent here to do.
Brother Byron nods.
That suggests then we need those bone dice artifact in order to proceed against the enemy.
What was your approach on this, Melody? What conversation were you having? Because I have an idea.
I'll hear that. I was hoping that honesty could win the day, but when we've got visions from dark creatures beyond the veil, I don't know.
Right. I don't think we had visions. I think of a dark creature. I think we had visions from Amira, and I think she got visions from the enemy, and her husband died fast from a disease.
A disease?
Yeah.
But
no, I think there are...
It was an illness, was it not?
Yes, it was a disease.
Right. So my point is that we have a history that we can share with her. I know that you don't want to share that we are the Fist of Amira, but I think it's vital that she know, because I think it's vital that we get these dice. And here's the thing. We can also point out that we were in a small village and we borrowed a magic item that helped us fight a demon and save that village. And that's what we want to do again. Not keep these dice, but borrow them to maybe affect this war. And if it's important to her, when it's served its purpose, we can bring them back just like we gave those cold iron and those weapons back.
Was there something about the vision that made it clear that they'd return home? Because to me it sounded like the fell forces gave her a vision of us stealing the dice.
And my concern is that she's worried about losing something that was important to her husband's life. And I think that if we're just saying we're going to borrow it, it might be more beneficial, and it might be more possible that she's willing to give them to us.
I agree, but I think also the destiny of the dice might be at our sides for a longer time than you think they might need to be there. And then,
but we're not lying if we're going to say we will eventually return them.
Might take a few years.
Dwarfs are rather long-lived. Ordinarily.
It's just a thought I had. An approach that I thought might be useful to you, Melody.
no, I was thinking in non-social terms. You're right. A promise to someday return them will be beneficial towards
Did I
convincing
mishear?
a grieving widow.
But that's not my only point. My only point is, to tell her of the missions we've been on that Marduk just mentioned, that we've saved a number of towns. We've helped a number of people.
And to tell you the truth, the vision might not even been a false vision. She may have been given a true vision, but given in such a way that made it look bad when we were actually doing good, because let's say it was a glimpse of the future and we couldn't get a hold of these dice that were desperately needed to help Amira's will and to help our country. And so we had to find a way to acquire them, and that's what we did. And we would rather not do that and rather be given them willingly instead of having to steal them for what we need to do.
Did I hear that she was a priestess of Amira, or?
He called her Your Highness, which you know from spending a year in Temerity, the capital. The next level down from a pillar is a high priest or high priestess.
Okay.
So he obviously has some skills when it comes to Amira and the worship of Amira of some sort or another.
I bring that up only because if Brother Byron's comments are true, then this force was able to influence someone who is supposedly very devoted to Amira.
And how much easier would it be to influence us?
Well, sometimes the best lies are 95% true, so if Amira granted her a vision, but this force was able to twist it a little bit to make it look like...
It looks less like borrowing and more like...
Right. That also makes me think that whatever power has to be pretty close or pretty strong to get through what I would expect a high priestess to be able to... We're talking about a high priestess receiving a vision from her chosen god.
He had seemed to be touched by something from the other side of the veil. The glyphs of protection, of sanctuary, kind of dimmed when she took a step inward, and I think that's a mark that, not that she's on their side, just that something has tried to influence her.
Is there any way or to recognize or to detect...
If we could prove it to her, that would be wonderful.
I'm sorry, wait a minute. What are we talking about? That something dimmed?
There were magical glyphs that surrounded the central dais. They formed a circle about 20 feet in diameter.
You saw where the tiles were different?
I thought that was just a design, right?
No, it was also a magical spell.
You want to find a way to prove this to her?
The source of her visions?
That she may have been influenced?
But it's something you saw. You said it was visual, that you actually saw it?
The visions?
No, the dimming.
Most undoubtedly. I thought perhaps it had something to do with what the spell was, but I wasn't cognizant enough of what that may be.
We're meeting in the same building. We could ask her to go and notice herself.
It will be more noticeable at night. It was difficult during the day, which is why it probably escaped your notice. I fear that while we sit here, that force that acted upon her is planning.
More.
Yes. That we will come back and have worse odds.
My angle on it is a karmatic balance. There were 3 visions. Good, neutral, and evil each had a leg in this race.
There you
Neutral, perhaps represented by the Lady of Ash, gave a vision to our friend Grodor. Amira gave a vision to her chosen champion. She pats Marduk on the back. Perhaps, if you're right, she gestures towards Alder. The fell horses had their own vision sent to someone who would be in our path, who could block us from receiving what we so clearly need. But I just wanted to voice what I took it as. It could be that Marduk's correct, and it was all visions from Amira, but twisted by one patron or another.
I am going to try to pick up a spare scroll of sending, if such a thing is available in this town for a price that I can afford, that we can put her into contact with the Pillar of...
Why do we need a spare one? We have 3, and they were for emergencies. This is pretty important, is it not?
Amira says so.
Not necessarily to our original mission, but I think that we're receiving orders from on high now, so there's that. Anyway, Guy Ludstrom, the Exemplar of Copshire, should be able to back us up with either a spare one or one of our 3. But I was just hoping that we could requisition it as part of our duties here, and not expend the ones we keep for emergencies. We will not always be in such civilized places. We can just expend one of the scrolls of sending, if this is a good time to do so, not like right now when we meet with her, to get a character witness. Asmodeus is the chief demon ostensibly in charge of the Nine Hells, patron of the lawgivers.
Asmodeus. Mm-hmm.
It could be anyone under his command that initiated this. Deception is not necessarily his strong suit.
Actually, deception is his strong suit.
Oh,
He's the father of lies. He is the golden-tongued. I mean, yes, there are other devils who specialize in it, but
there's like one race that gets
Why are we deeming
bonuses. I don't know.
a Duke of Hell?
Because he's been the enemy of Amira for some time.
He is the patron deity of the lawgivers who you're now at war with.
He was one of the ruin lords that walked the earth that Amira ended up shutting beyond the veil.
Don't say his name out loud. Holy cow.
And
she does a holy gesture before she says that. So.
Right, okay.
And it almost makes sense that the news of the impending war and the first moves happen at the same time these visions kind of happen. Like the players are in place and people are starting to pull strings and...
Yeah, and for this pillar to suddenly die, I think something was introduced to her circle, and I'm not surprised that she's been influenced. I think that is a good line of, after we've vouched our trustworthiness, we can start investigating that one-on-one with her.
Melody, do you think there's any value of talking or interrogating the healer that tended him? Would maybe there be some clues there, or would that be too much of an invasion of their privacy and offender?
It depends on how closely they're related to the family. I certainly wouldn't want word to get back to her before we've established our character.
I have a spell called Sanctuary, and it can ward a creature, specifically of attacks, but also harmful spells. So it might...
I don't think it works posthumously.
Okay.
So,
plus, I don't know that it would be necessary in a temple. I mean, because how is she not safe in Amira's temple?
Now that's a spell I feel like might work.
What spell is that?
This is kind of heretical. She lowers her head a little bit, leans in. But Braylo, the goddess of judgment in West Cauldron, has a procedure that during law proceedings, people are subjected to a sort of...
Compulsion?
Not a compulsion, it's more of a scan to make sure they aren't influenced by outsiders. They don't live far from the lawgivers, and possessions have happened in their history, so they've developed means to try to find out whether or not someone's being influenced. This might help in our situation.
I like that idea, and I would also ask if this is to Alder and maybe to Gabrielle.
Yeah.
Do we have any means to communicate or speak with the recently dead? Or is that on the wrong side of the tracks?
I think it is for me. Brother Byron might be able to solve that issue.
It is something that has always intrigued me, Marduk. It is not something I can currently do.
How long till 9 bells?
You have been drinking and talking for roughly an hour, so it's 5 bells. Brother Byron, really quick, says that speaking with the dead is something that he will be able to do further on in his devotion.
It's something we can do before we get ready to have our 9 bells interview. Okay.
No, unfortunately not.
One of the things I want to do is clean up and bathe, and I want to put on my best impression when we go to meet again.
You want a makeover?
Yeah, we could do a makeover scene.
There you go.
Hell yeah. Gabrielle cracks her knuckles.
Marduk, you had more of a vision of what the dice do. I was just more or less being chased and told to it's really important that we get a hold of them. But what exactly are these dice, as far as you know, supposed to do? She said it helps them divine the future. You make it sound like it's a game of chance that you can just change the rolls on. So what do you think they do?
Well, another way of looking at that is, in my vision, it seemed that you could force the probabilities.
Did she roll the dice and then tell you what the results would be while hiding it under a cup? Was it a situation where
No, she actually let me try, and then I concentrated on a number, and I rolled that number. It's almost as if they were allowing me to force a result or enforce a probability.
I don't know if Holy Bones came from this or the other way around. There's always been tables of divination for how you cast sticks or throw dice to determine what the future may bring. Holy Bones is, in my understanding, a gamified version of fortune telling that was done with Blessed Bones. But this might be an extension of that. I don't know.
Okay. Did we have anything else we wanted to do before the get-together?
Melody, this is kind of your class of people, your status, your whatever's. This is your show. We're not out in the wild taking care of horses or hunting for food for the day.
Right, so, and I'm not using my angel powers to argue down monsters, so...
Right, so I'm going to follow your lead, but if we can work on a signal of either something to stand down or to jump in, that would help me a lot because I'm not good at reading these civilized interactions.
I was sent to West Cauldron to try to beat that into me. I did pick up a thing or two, but from what I've noticed, Alder is equally skilled, at least in that regard, so I'm glad to have backup on this.
Oh, I was going by social station, but...
No, I don't mind assisting in any way I can, but I think this is you, Melody. This is your ability, your skill, your diplomacy.
I'll use the credentials. I just would like backup is all.
No problem.
I'm there for you always.
We need a high sign. That is what Marduk means.
Right. I am not good in these situations. I am unfamiliar with these signals and...
For sure. When we need the spear slammed into the ground and the light shining truth on people, I'll give you the signal.
All right. Thank you. That's something clear that I can understand.
Tell me when you need the incredibly simplistic view of the angels, and I'll drop it.
Okay. Unless anyone has a scene to do, we can meet with her.
All right.
I can't think of anything in Travail.
The only thing I could think of doing is, besides bathing and getting my best clothes ready to go, is maybe just going to the library to do research on these dice. But aside from that, I'm ready to go.
So you spend your time talking at a table over chilled wine, which is really wonderful in a town like Travail. You throw some gold on the table for a room with a bath so you can clean up if so desired. You spend some time having dinner. Let's say maybe a gold piece per person for dinner, a shared room for the night overall, some drinks. Your friend, Melody Herzog, finds your table later on when he has a moment. And when you're not talking over secret Fist of Amira stuff, he shares you some tales of the town of Travail. Your family actually sponsored him because each exemplar family can sponsor an orc to actually live in Amira and not live in the autonomous region in the Hollow Lands, which most orcs live at. So this particular orc, Urzoth, he was sponsored by your family, and he's forever indebted to you. So you end up with twice as much food on your table and twice as much alcohol.
I call him Uncle Urzog.
Yeah, he's just a fantastic orc who needs to carry his papers with him constantly because that's how infrequent actual orcs are in the country of Amira. So you get a chance to catch up with him. He tells you lots of stories about the town. For your part, Gabrielle, you hear about the fighting pits are relatively well known in Travail because there's so many mercenary companies. They're constantly facing off against each other to hone their skills and keep themselves sharp. So the fighting pits of Travail are very famous and something that you would definitely want to get a few moments to check out and go to during the evening before 9 bells hits.
Absolutely. And I'd stay here and show off my strength if we weren't in such a hurry.
Right, absolutely. So you wander the streets of Travail for a bit, seeing the various venues that have these fighting pits that usually come alive right now at dusk when the sun's setting over the Middle Ridge Range or the Middle Ridge Peaks. And you take in a few battles that are very exciting and quite well done and quite bloody as well. This is real battles in a real fight pit. So you catch that. The rest of you catch up with Urzoth.
No, actually,
go ahead.
I would like to escort Grodor upstairs because I spent much of my youth in the courts of Temerity, and I know how he should look and how he should dress up, and I also want to get him the hell away from the wine because he has a history of drinking too much alcohol. So I'll help you out here, Grodor. I'll show you how it's appropriate to dress when going to a meeting of this type.
That's good. Eventually you make your way upstairs, and you can help Grodor become a bit more presentable in a higher society type meeting. Mel, you spend a lot of time with Urzoth, and I'm sure Marduk, you probably do as well. I mean, this is a straight out full blood orc. The first one you've seen up close and interacted with since you've been in Amira, the country of, since you made your way to Temerity and took part in the year training at the academy. That's how you guys spend your evening, if no one has anything else to add. And we'll say that the five of you, along with Brother Byron, reconnoiter outside the Hall of Heroes just prior to 9 bells. And the Soul Watch are expecting you. They lead you upstairs to a second level of the Hall of Heroes, lead you to the northwestern sector of it, and there is a impressive, heavy oak door encased in metal. And that door opens up, and beyond that you see what looks to be something between a shrine and a conference room, where there's a long table and there's several chairs, but throughout there's symbols of Amira, statuary, crosses on the wall of various sorts of amulets hanging, just everything that lends itself to Amira and her worship. And seated behind this desk on the opposite side is Vanna Norik. She's still dressed in her black outfit and her black veil, which is again up and over her hair. She's looking at you. She has a watchman to either side of her. They're looking seemingly for some sort of support, one of which was the watch captain that happened to be with her when you first visited the Hall of Heroes. She stands up, she sweeps her arm out and says, "Please take a seat. We have much to discuss." And that's where we'll end it for the night. I want to thank the listeners for joining us for this episode. We certainly appreciate your coming each week and hearing the story and enjoying, hopefully, what transpired tonight. And then also thanks to the players. A lot of great role-playing tonight, guys. I want to thank everyone for their efforts and thank everyone for just a great job of really delving into that uncomfortable situation with Vanna and trying to work your way around that and managing to get a parlay with her, which certainly wasn't a given by any stretch of the imagination. I wasn't going to fake any dice and make it happen on my end. It was all up to you guys to make that happen, and you did. So great job role-playing tonight from everyone. And we'll meet again in a week.
Good session, everyone. Thank you for listening to Knights of the Night Actual Play Podcast. If you'd like to send us a question, comment, or feedback, you can reach us in a number of ways, including Twitter at KOTN_podcast or by emailing us at feedback@KOTNpodcast.com. And don't forget the iTunes reviews. We also have a Facebook page which can be found at facebook.com/KOTN.podcast. While on Facebook, you can join like-minded folks at our fan page at facebook.com/groups/KOTNfan. And lastly, there's our blog at KOTNpodcast.com, where there's an Amazon link on the right-hand side. For those of you who'd like a more steady way to help us pay the bills, or if you live outside the U.S., you can help by donating to our Patreon page at patreon.com/KOTN. And please remember to join us next week for more mystery and adventure.
that a big truck went by and that may have made my window.
I know, there's a motorcycle driving by.
Is it a ward or seal?
Not an expert. I just recognize the...
You know what? That's the wrong question. Marduk wouldn't ask that question. Sorry.
Mike asked that question.
Go ahead and make another perception check. This one with advantage because you rolled 20 your first time.
Right.
Persuasion.
Persuasion. Did I say perception again?
You said perception.
What the hell?
Screw this place. People hate me.
No, Scott, I understood. I was explaining that Arlo did not know. Arlo. I was explaining that Arlo was downstairs crying. No, I was explaining that Alder didn't know because I didn't perceive.
Well, you role played so effectively, you maybe changed the map.
I fooled you. Yeah.
Yes, you did.
But there's always been motorcycles outside my window really loud.
All the time.
There's always...
Speaking in tongues, I don't understand what you're saying.
Other possible titles for this episode available for voting at the Facebook fan page were Don't Say His Name Out Loud. You Want a Makeover? Amira's Pieces on the Chessboard. Good, neutral, and evil each had a leg in this race. Our fate seems intertwined. And iced wine.